Sheriff's Department to do inspections. The first 20 inspections have found no violations, although there is no guidelines issued for compliance. LD 1258, good business practices, also enacted will regulate caregivers and create unprecedented taxes on services and medicine. My issues with requiring a pesticide applicator's license is that chemical pesticides should not be used on marijuana. Pesticide residues have not been tested for burning and inhaling, only for consumption by means of eating. I believe an organic pest management system is the only way to make true medicine, as many chemical pesticides are very toxic to humans.
We're at time, so if you could give us some final.
Okay, in conclusion, LD 766, 726, 1258 ought not to pass. Keep Maine's medical marijuana program viable and strong, and don't regulate the caregiver model into non-existence. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Seeing no questions, appreciate your testimony. Additional testimony in opposition to any of these bills.
Good afternoon, members of the committee.
Welcome.
Senator Brady, Representative Duffy. I'm Joanna Reese. Nice to be here today. Thank you for your time. I am here today mostly
If you could make sure, I know you're signing in, but
Sorry.
You don't have to multitask.
Okay.
yeah, you can.
One second.
Would love you to be able to speak into the mic so anyone listening online can hear your testimony.
Thank you. I'm here today as a concerned citizen and a friend and family member of patients and caregivers across our great state. I thank you for your time and your attention to these matters. Mostly I'm concerned that a couple of these bills would violate constitutional rights of citizens. Thank you. And infringe on our civil liberties. I totally agree with patient and caregiver safety and public safety and in general adding integrity and reasonable oversight to the program as a whole to protect the citizenry of Maine as a whole. But I'm mostly in opposition to 726, an act to increase patient safety and Maine's.
One quick thing, sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
Just because you said your name off mic, could you state your name again?
Joanna Reese.
Joanna Reese. All right, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Yes, I'm just mostly a concerned citizen that finds major concern and opposition, in particular to 726. That being not because I don't agree with patient safety and increasing integrity of the overall program, but mostly I see that DHS is seeming to be overreaching their authority and going against laws that govern our great state and protect our citizens. So specifically the report that was ordered by your committee and due this December from the department regarding their rulemaking procedures has not been submitted. It's totally absent. And this bill 726 would actually authorize the department to preemptively implement laws that have not even been authorized. So basically it's an illegal action, and as a matter of fact there's a pending lawsuit against the department for implementing these investigations without going through the legally required process of legislative approval and public hearing first. That only makes sense for obvious reasons. I believe there must be a clear public process for implementing rules regarding department card issuance, investigations, consistent training for inspectors, and a process for remedying problems, including the appeals process for any problems that may arise. This includes any changes which must go through major substantive rulemaking and require a public hearing before adoption. And again, with 266, I think there are already laws in place that protect our state from unauthorized and illegal and harmful activities. And all all law enforcement would have to do is to inquire with DHS in those instances. So I believe there are things in place to protect us, and I'm happy to work with anyone or answer any questions regarding my testimony.
Seeing no questions, thank you very much for testifying today.
Thank you.
Additional testimony in opposition to any of these bills.
Good afternoon, Senator Brady. Representative Katine, members of the committee, my name is Ken Albert. I'm director for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, into which GLRS reports. I have to correct a couple of assertions that have been made here this afternoon that I think I can let some things go unchecked, and but some I can't. You just heard testimony that the report to this committee was not submitted. It was submitted. You just heard testimony that there was a lawsuit for implementing investigations. There is no lawsuit for implementing investigations. It kind of, I want to say it's surprising the lengths that some people will go to provide this information to achieve their own agendas, and it's concerning to me. We are not doing inspections. So again, that assertion is inaccurate and it's incorrect. We have retained the Sheriff's Association to do complaint investigations. It's only regarding certain complaints that come in. We're not doing inspections of caregivers in the state of Maine. It is not happening. The whole notion of caregivers being characterized as criminals, can we put that to rest once and for all? From my perspective, the Department of Health and Human Services does not see caregivers as criminals. We have very good and active caregivers in the state who follow the laws and are law-abiding citizens and conduct their small business accordingly. And I think by framing the department as continuing to view caregivers as criminals fuels a fire that is unnecessary. We do have some caregivers who operate illegally, who operate outside the confines of the Medical Marijuana Act. Those are criminals, and we'll treat those accordingly. But generally speaking, we do not hold caregivers within the view of criminals. And I think we've gone a long way, as a matter of fact, over the past year, bringing together caregivers to caregiver forums and trying to communicate and find out what's in the best interest of caregivers and how the department can work more collaboratively with caregivers. And I think a little bit of recognition of that would be helpful. Any rules that are promulgated, again, this whole thing about promulgation of rules, routine, technical, and major substantive, I think there's some misunderstanding there. The department already has routine technical authority for promulgation of rules under the Medical Marijuana Act. We have had that. When those rules are promulgated, they're done with public hearing under Title V, the Maine Administrative Procedures Act. So to assert that it's the department trying to overreach, trying to be sneaky, trying to do something without, it's not transparent, again, is an inaccurate assertion. We have always held public hearings with rulemaking. Why have regulations? Because regulation amounts to credibility. I have had meetings with the federal DEA, and we may have been ranked as a B in this state, but we could be an A if we had more regulations of the caregiver industry, because that's the concern of the FDEA, is that you have a large amount of marijuana growers who are unregulated, and while we admit that the vast majority of those are law-abiding citizens, we know we have active and ongoing investigations. We know there are, I will say, more than a few caregivers who are utilizing this law to make a lot of money. And the other assertion that the department is catering somehow to metal lobbyists, again, is an assertion that just boggles my mind. We have a dispensary forum, just like we have a caregiver forum. The department is not in bed with the dispensaries. The department has a program where we have dispensary operators and where we have caregivers, and we work equally with both. The department supports in part and disagrees in part with LD 726 and LD 1258 and LD 5, and you have my testimony on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albert. Any questions for Mr. Albert? Seeing no questions, thank you for addressing the committee. Any additional opposition to any of these bills? Seeing no testimony in opposition, is there any testimony neither for nor against any of these bills we are currently looking at? So it's neither for nor against, but seeking to provide additional information.
Hello, my name is Brian Bratton. I'm a resident of Augusta, and I'd just like to clarify one thing Mr. Albert said. There is a lawsuit against HHS based on not following administrative procedure, and I'm one of the plaintiffs in it. So that is happening. And I can provide you guys with anything you'd like to see about that. It's just something you should be aware that's happening.
All right. Seeing no question, Representative Dean.
So again, for the work session, you could provide us with a copy of that. Someone's
Sure
complained,
can.
and just to clarify that for us, would probably be helpful. Thank you very much.
Seeing no additional questions, thank you for your testimony. Any additional testimony neither for nor against? Seeing no additional testimony, then this public hearing on LD 5, LD 1258, LD 766, LD 266 and LD 726 is now closed. We will now take up the public hearing on LD. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Before we take up the next, any requests from the committee for additional information for the work session? Representative Burstein?
Thank you, Senator. I would just like to see the main scorecard, your ABC. I haven't seen any of this, so I have no idea what it says
It'd also be nice to see if there's a way to see that in the context of the scores for all other states that are scored. That'd be helpful to see too. Representative Gattini? Oh, Representative Burstein, you're right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's still on.
Thank you, Senator. Again, I think it would be helpful for the work session if our analysts could bring us some kind of an analysis about what the regulatory and statutory authority is for the department to do any kind of inspection, whether they be complaint investigations or inspections generally. If that authority exists. Thank you.
All right. Any additional requests? Seeing none, then we'll move on to LD 752. Now, one thing to say with LD 752 for those who are going to be speaking on this, since this is just one single bill and it's not a group of bills, we're going to be moving back for this to our normal time allotment of 3 minutes instead of 4 minutes. And my understanding, Representative Malaby, who is one of the co-sponsors on the bill, will be presenting it to us today. Welcome, Representative Malaby.
Good afternoon, Senator. Good afternoon, Senator Brakey, Representative Gattini, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Health and Human Services. My name is Richard Malaby. I'm here today, however, to present on behalf of Larry Dunphy, who represents House District 118, which I will read to you, is 16 towns and 6 unorganized territory and parts of Franklin, Somerset, and Piscataquis counties. And I'm here to present an act to permit medical marijuana cultivation by incapacitated adults. This bill allows a qualifying patient under the Maine Medical Use of Marijuana Act who is an incapacitated adult to possess marijuana and cultivate marijuana for that incapacitated adult's own use. In 2012, the HHS made a rule change that prohibited a patient whose physician had recommended medical use of marijuana from cultivating their own plants. This singles them out from all the other people who are allowed to cultivate 6 plants for personal use. Currently, rules allow an incapacitated patient to designate a caregiver or dispenser to grow medical marijuana on their behalf, but prohibit them from having any contact with the plants while they are grown. A patient's legal status does not necessarily relate to their ability to care for plants for their personal use, and I feel that these patients are not being treated fairly like any other person that would be allowed to grow their own marijuana plants for personal use. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm not sure that I can answer any questions, but I'm sure Representative Dunphy could if you wanted to call him on his cell phone. I don't know, that would be so thank you for your time, and I could answer any brief questions.
I have one question, if you are able to answer it. If not, we'll defer to someone else. Can you define an incapacitated adult and what exactly we're dealing with?
I cannot.
All right.
That being said, I'd like to be able to, but I cannot.
Great. Maybe someone who to follow can help define that for us. Representative Hannon.
Thank you. I have the same question. It says in the bill, incapacitated adult.
I have the same answer.
Section 3472, subsection A. So
It's in there. That I know. But
All right,
I
so you can
can't.
go look up the subsection and find it. All right. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Are there any legislative co-sponsors who wish to speak to this, aside from the one that just presented it? Seeing none, then we'll move to testimony in support of this bill.
Good afternoon again. My name is still Steve Rule, and I'm still from Lincoln. Just a brief statement. MMCM supports this bill. I had a chance to talk to a couple of friends of mine who are therapists, and they spoke to the positive effects on a person's life
who can grow plants. It gives them something to do. It gives them a positive outlook in their life. Sometimes when they're incapacitated, things are really bad, and they think so in their minds. And taking care of plants, having tasks to do, is actually very good for them. And so I'll keep it brief, but we're in support of it.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Can you help us?
I cannot.
You don't.
I
you're not
cannot.
familiar with
But
it?
I'm sure it's a determination made by the state, and there's probably some that deal with mental capacity and physical. And so, again, I'd hate to see us discriminate against people whom this kind of therapy could really use in terms of just growing their own plants, their own marijuana plants, their own tomato plants, whatever.
All right.
Okay?
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Oh, hey, here it is.
There you go.
All right. Thank you. All right. So that question is answered, so, all right.
Hi again. I'm still Jody, and I really support this. I think it's wonderful, much on the same therapeutic essence that Steve just spoke of. I did a lot of work with NAMI, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. I did a lot of speaking for them, and I did a lot of their training sessions. One of the first things they recommend to a family member who has a family member that is either mentally or physically, legally incapacitated is to give them tasks to do. Garden, put them in charge of your house plants are some of the first things that are recommended because they are simple enough with the right guidance for them to be able to maintain their plants and their own medicine. What this gives them is a feeling of purpose, confidence, and belonging. Without these, there's actually a really high suicide rate amongst the legally incapacitated people in this state and in many other states. And by giving someone that reason to get up, that timer set to water their plants, that timer of it's time to harvest, you are in essence giving someone who is not capable of functioning a regular life a reason to live and a reason to wake up in the morning to take care of themselves and to take care of their plants. That is all.
All right. Thank you very much. Seeing no questions. Additional testimony in support of this bill?
Good afternoon. I'm Darrell Goodrow. I am a board member of MMCM. Fourth time up here today, so I'm getting way better at it. Not a lot to say on this except for I have the same question you have. What does qualify somebody? Is there a chance that you have a moment just to really give us that definition? I'm sure others in the room would like to hear it as well.
Sure. I don't know that I'm the one. Well, if I'm going to figure out a way to phrase I'm going to figure out a way to phrase it as a question so that all right. Incapacitated adult means any adult who is impaired by reason of mental illness, mental deficiency, physical illness, or disability to the extent that that individual lacks sufficient understanding or capacity to make or communicate responsible decisions concerning that individual's person to the extent the adult cannot effectively manage or apply that individual's estate to necessary ends. Does that sound like a good definition? There's my question.
Thank you. I do think that sounds like a good description and definition there. And so again, I have almost everything to say that was already said, and like you had asked for earlier, we'll keep this short. I'm not certain what the benefit of not allowing those patients access to their own plants and the benefit of watching them grow, if that's all that they can do, the benefit of touching them and pruning them and working with them or just being in the room with them. As we heard earlier from a botanist, he said one of the greatest release that he had was just growing the plant, let alone all of the other benefits after the fact. And so, again, as a board member and personally, I'd like to come out in favor of this. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. See no questions. Additional testimony in support of this bill?
Good afternoon again. Senator Brakey, Representative Gattin, and members of the committee. My name is Hillary Lister, and I live in Athens, Maine. I'm in support of this bill. This is a bill that would allow something to happen that previously was allowed under Maine's medical marijuana law up until 2012. In 2012, there were a number of rule changes that were made by the department, and in the rule changes was a prohibition on a person who is legally incapacitated from cultivating for personal use. My mother is legally incapacitated. I am her legal guardian. She is an amazing gardener. She is perfectly capable of taking care of her own plants, but she is not legally or mentally capable of going out holding down a regular job. But these are the people who this law was originally put into place to help, I feel like. And it should also be pointed out that a majority of people, a significant amount of people who are legally incapacitated are on fixed income. They don't have the extra income to spend with a dispensary, with a caregiver. This isn't something that's covered by insurance. So if someone is physically capable of cultivating their own plants, this is just for personal use. I see no reason why that should be prohibited, and I hope the committee supports this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no questions, additional testimony in support of this bill?
I can make this brief. I'm Paul McCarrier, I'm president of Legalize Maine. I'm from Knox, and we support this measure.
All right. 3 seconds. Additional testimony in support of this bill? Seeing none. Additional testimony in opposition to this bill? Seeing none. Testimony neither for nor against this bill, but seeking to provide additional information? Seeing none. Then a request for additional information from the committee for the work session. We got the definition of incapacitated adults. So Senator Hassel?
They don't have a name on something.
Sure. So can we ask, one thing we very much do appreciate, this is a housekeeping note, is when we get something from someone, we very much like to have on there what it is, who we're getting it from. Can I just ask, I appreciate the magazine, especially because they're interesting, they're fun pictures of some people I know on the front of it. But could we, for just our knowledge, which organization is distributing this? And the person's name?
My name is Jacob Holmes. That's Plant Roots Magazine. It's basically a community-based publication, and there's a lot to do with education awareness in there. I've noticed that many of the questions that have been repetitively asked here, there are articles in there that provide education on those things, with academic resources and everything else. So.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Any additional requests for information for the work session? Seeing none, then all testimony having been taken, this hearing on LD 752 is now closed. We will take up the public hearing on LD 1058, LD 1059. 1058 is presented by Representative Sanderson, and 1059 is presented by Representative Farnsworth. And I believe they're both here. And I'm going to put the clock back to 4 minutes because we're doing 2 bills. No, that's not okay.
For the committee this time, you have the full testimony. And I did have email passed around with the full testimony for the prior one, so sorry about that technical glitch. Good afternoon, Senator Brakey, Representative Gatine, distinguished members of the Health and Human Services Committee. It's my pleasure to come before you to present LD 1058, an act regarding medical marijuana registered testing laboratories. It's been a pleasure working with advocates and patients, shaping and mending Maine's medical marijuana program for the last 4 years. Though we still have far to go, Maine's program has evolved into a leading program model for the nation. Each year it has moved forward and evolved. As the program and the specificity of the patients treated expand, so does the need to ensure that a quality medicinal product is produced, making it vital for Maine to now look toward allowing testing laboratories. The cannabinoid profile of a particular strain is important for assessing which type of plant is best to serve a patient's medical needs. THC levels as well as CBDs are important depending on the debilitating condition to be treated and anticipated dosing. Testing can also be run for possible contaminants, making sure that they have the best medicine available. LD 1058 directs the Department of Health and Human Services, or more specifically, the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Services, to develop a registration process for the creation of these very important testing labs in Maine. I would urge your support and I will be happy to take any questions. However, Representative Farnsworth, who is coming behind me, also has a very similar bill, and I would offer mine up for extinction and work directly with Representative Farnsworth, so there is really only one vehicle going forward. But I did insist on reading my testimony since I did take time out of my Sunday afternoon to write it. So I would offer that you could dispense with my bill and we could use Representative Farnsworth as a vehicle, and he has agreed to work on some language that we would like as well. So.
I'm sure once we get to the end of the public hearing, we'll be more than happy to kill you.
Doesn't matter to me whose name is on it, as long as we get the job done, right? All right, thank you.
All right. Representative Farnsworth.
Good afternoon, troops. You are tired. I can recall exactly how this goes, so I certainly am sensitive to trying to make this as short and sweet as possible. As you are certainly well aware, my name is Dick Farnsworth. I represent part of Portland, District 37, and Senator Brickey and Representative Gattine. I'm really happy to be here today to present this particular bill. A little bit of background, I'll try to make this very quick, as you have also experienced, the many families that have come before this committee, and I must say that was last year that we experienced that, and then this year before the Education Committee around a different bill, and have talked about trying to get appropriate medication for their children who have seizure activity. And this has been a great concern ever since I heard it last year, because right now, given the fact that we are so far behind in terms of any kind of research on marijuana, medical marijuana, that we really have not developed standards, we haven't developed quality control, so that families can know that when they give a dose today, it will be the same quality, the same potency as the one they give tomorrow. And given that particular kind of concern, I felt that this was an important first step in terms of trying to resolve that problem. So we're talking about setting up, basically having a department set up standards for laboratories, that basically the intent is to ensure that there is some quality control, that we have some possibilities for ensuring that there is the consistency and the potency, and also the guarantee that based upon these standards that families can rely upon what they're getting. And I think that really is the important thing. Ultimately, what my bill proposes is it establishes clear standards for the licensing of marijuana testing facilities. It allows for testing facilities to collect and possess small samples of marijuana. Requires that any label which states the potency or cannabinoid, get that right, profile of the medicine and is attached to marijuana or product containing marijuana sold as part of our medical marijuana program, whether by a dispensary or a caregiver, include only tested results from a licensed marijuana testing facility, and does not prohibit a dispensary or a caregiver from maintaining an internal testing facility for research and development purposes. And once again, the objective is to take that first step in terms of beginning to give some quality control and giving parents some reassurance that what they're giving their child has a level of quality that they can rely upon. I will take a step back and say this summer, I was at a conference and I had a chance to talk to a senator from Utah. They were experiencing the same issue, and they had assigned this to their university. So there may be an option for something like that within the state. We'll keep open to the possibilities, but at this particular point, this is what we have in the bill. Thank you very much.
Representative Burstein.
Hi, Representative. Does this mean every plant gets tested?
Every plant, I'm not sure that it's every plant. No, I think that it's a matter of ensuring that when it goes from point X, which is production, to point Y, which is the product, that there is a guarantee that it's tested appropriately there.
All right, seeing no additional questions, thank you very much, Representative.
Thank you very much. Right.
Additional testimony, well, first, are there any legislative co-sponsors who wish to speak to this? See no legislative co-sponsors, I will move to testimony in support of this bill. And since technically we're only doing one bill now, I'm going to go back to 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Senator Brakey, Representative Gattini, members of the committee. My name is Kathy Cobb. I'm a board member for Wellness Connection of Maine, one of the 8, we operate 4 of the medical marijuana dispensaries, and today I'm actually delivering testimony for Paul Seveny, who's a retired pharmacist, who's the president of our board of directors, and this will be in support of 1059. Dear Senator Brakey, Representative Gattini, members of the committee, my name is Paul Seveny, and I serve as the chair of the board of directors of the Wellness Connection of Maine. I testified today in strong support of LD 1059, which will finally establish a safe and consistent system for testing medical marijuana. To establish my credentials, I believe that it's important to understand my educational background and employment history. I graduated from the University of New Hampshire in 1969 with a bachelor's degree in medicinal chemistry, with emphasis on analytical chemistry and organic medicinal chemistry research. While attending the University of Connecticut School of Pharmacy, I worked as an analytical chemist for the U.S. Army. I received a Bachelor of Science degree from UConn in 1972. The last 20 years of my pharmacy career were as the Chief Operating Officer of Affiliated Pharmacy Services, Inc., a fully owned subsidiary of Eastern Maine Medical Center and Eastern Maine Health Systems, Inc. I oversaw the operation of 3 outpatient pharmacies and 1 retail pharmacy. The outpatient pharmacy specialized in EMMC, discharge patient care, and cancer care of Maine outpatient care, and supported the EMMC healthcare specialty practice groups in and around Bangor. I retired in 2010, and I've been involved with Wellness Connection of Maine since 2009, and have acted as board chair from its inception. The discussions that have occurred over the past few years about laboratory testing of medical marijuana have been enlightening, considering that the one group that stands to gain the most from this testing has had very little input, and that's the patient. There's a fairly large majority of providers within the medical marijuana industry who would rather not have to undergo chemical analysis. Many claims have been made about purity and content that could not be supported. It is without any doubt that marijuana has been sold that wouldn't meet the very close scrutiny provided by a licensed testing facility. The medical marijuana patient deserves to know what the composition is of the product they are consuming. That patient deserves to be assured that no random, unapproved chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and growth modifiers have been used that may affect them negatively. Today's physicians or nurse practitioners would feel far more confident in recommending medical marijuana to patients if they could see the actual chemical analysis of the product prior to being purchased by the patient. The tracking of marijuana plants by dispensaries ensures that any variation in the cultivation protocols will be recorded, and that the record then follows the packaged material all the way to the patient. Many pharmacy colleagues of mine from EMMC have been very hesitant to become involved in marijuana as an alternate therapy recommendation due to the uncertainty of the quality of the product and the variability that occurs with slight changes in cultivation techniques and protocols. There is no standardization. Standardization of a biological entity is very difficult to accomplish and requires very rigid controls to be able to reproduce consistent batches of product time after time.
We're at time, so if you could
Okay.
come to a conclusion.
I think the last point I want to get to is near the end, if dispensaries and caregivers are going to place labels on the medical marijuana they provide to patients, then this should be, that information for the label should be provided by a state licensed laboratory, and we're eager to work with you on this.
All right. Senator Haskell.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Cobb. Could you tell me, do you have any other relationship with the medical marijuana history?
Some wouldn't want me to say that. I think one of the last times I was probably before this committee had to do with medical marijuana, and I'm probably one of the few people in the room who have seen both sides now, from the departmental point of view, and now working within the industry, and it's been very eye-opening. It's been very rewarding. I've learned so much since the days that the referendum in 2009 passed, and I found out I was going to be involved with the implementation of the medical program. And I'm still here and finding it very, very rewarding.
You also mentioned, if I could ask one more question, you also mentioned something about tracking. At one point in time, as a matter of fact, on March 10th of 2011, there was a presentation to this committee about using an agricultural model which had a trip ticket type of control in which product could be labeled, batched, and labeled through its various portions.
Those are required at dispensaries.
And I just wondered if you felt as though that was an appropriate approach for this type of testing.
It is, and one of the things about the dispensary program is all the plants are tracked from seed to sale, and so you can take a harvest, for example, especially when it comes to testing, you can take a harvest and establish representative samples of a harvest. So once those tests have been done and you've got the results, they can be applied to that harvest. So each harvest will have kind of like an average blended result that can go on the label.
Thank you very much for the information.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Seeing no additional questions, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Additional testimony in support of this bill.